The rain had been falling since morning, soft at first, then harder, until the streets looked like silver rivers under the pale light. Keanu Reeves walked along a narrow road that wound through the hills, his jacket zipped all the way up, water dripping from his hair. It was supposed to be an easy walk back to town after leaving the small art gallery he had visited earlier. He had no idea that, in just a few hours, this road would lead him to a stranger in trouble, someone who would change everything. He kept his pace steady, the sound of his boots splashing in the shallow water matching the rhythm of his breathing. He had always liked walking in the rain. It gave him time to think. There was something peaceful about it, even when the world around him was heavy and gray. But that day, something felt different. It wasn't just the weather. It was a strange pull inside him, as if the road itself wanted him to keep going. Miles away, hidden behind a curve in the road and an abandoned bus stop, Ana de Armas sat on a broken wooden bench. Her phone battery had died hours ago, and no cars had passed in what felt like forever. She had been on her way to visit an old friend in the mountains when her car suddenly broke down. She had tried walking, but her ankle hurt after slipping on the wet ground, so she returned to the bus stop. She had wrapped her scarf tighter around her shoulders, shivering from the damp cold. She told herself someone would come soon. Someone always came eventually. But the light was fading, and the fog was rolling down from the hills, making it harder to see the road. She didn't know it yet, but the sound of boots splashing through puddles would soon be the most welcome sound she had ever heard. Keanu rounded the curve, his head down, watching his footing on the slick ground. He noticed the bus stop ahead, its roof sagging and streaked with rust. At first, he thought it was empty. Then he saw her. Sitting still, shoulders hunched, hair damp from the rain. She looked up, and their eyes met. "Hey," he said softly, slowing his steps. "Are you okay?" Ana blinked, hesitating for a moment. "My car broke down. I've been waiting for a bus, but I think there aren't any today." Her voice was calm, but her eyes told a different story. They were tired, uncertain, almost guarded. He stepped closer, the rain running down his face. "How long have you been here?" "A few hours," she replied, looking away for a second. "Maybe more. My phone's dead." Keanu glanced down the road behind him. It was empty in both directions, nothing but rain and fog. He could have said, "Good luck," and kept walking. After all, he didn't know her. But something inside him refused to let him leave her there. "There's a small town about 5 miles that way," he said, pointing toward the direction he had just come from. "No buses, but maybe someone there can help you." Ana frowned. 5 miles? She repeated quietly, as if testing the distance in her mind. He noticed the way she shifted her weight and winced slightly. "Is your ankle hurt?" "A little. It's not bad," she said quickly, though the truth was written all over her face. Keanu looked around. There were no lights, no sounds of engines, only the rain and the whisper of wind through the wet leaves. "Come on," he said gently. "I'll walk with you. We can take it slow." She hesitated. Trust wasn't something she gave easily, especially out here, away from the safety of crowded streets. But there was something steady in his voice, something that made her believe he wasn't the kind of man to leave someone behind. "Okay," she said finally, her voice almost drowned out by the rain. They began walking together, their steps slow at first. Keanu kept to her pace, glancing over now and then to make sure she wasn't struggling too much. The road curved ahead, and the fog thickened, swallowing the world in gray. After a few minutes, he broke the silence. "So, what brought you out here today?" "A friend," she said. "Or someone who used to be a friend. We haven't talked in years. I thought it was time to fix that." She smiled faintly, but it faded almost immediately. "Funny how things work out." He nodded. Sometimes the road we take to fix one thing leads us to something else entirely. She looked at him curiously. You sound like you know that from experience. Keanu's eyes softened, but he didn't answer right away. He just kept walking, his thoughts somewhere far away. As they moved on, the wind picked up, and the rain became heavier. The water on the road rose, covering their shoes, soaking their jeans. Anna stumbled once, and Keanu caught her arm without a word, steadying her until she could walk again. The miles ahead would not be easy, but neither of them knew that the real challenge was not the distance. It was what waited for them in the dark ahead. Something that would test their patience, their trust, and the quiet strength they were only beginning to see in each other. The rain didn't let up. It became a steady curtain, turning the world into shapes and shadows. Keanu and Anna walked in silence, their breaths visible in the cold air, their shoes splashing through puddles that seemed to grow deeper with every step. Keanu kept glancing at the road ahead, looking for any sign of lights or buildings. The town should have been closer now, but the fog made it impossible to tell. Every curve in the road felt like it might finally reveal their destination, yet each one only showed more empty road. Are you sure it's this way? Anna asked softly, her voice barely rising above the rain. Yes, Keanu replied. I passed through earlier. There's a diner, a few houses, a small repair shop. We'll find help there. Anna nodded, though her steps were slower now. Her ankle throbbed, and the cold was starting to seep into her bones. Still, she didn't complain. She didn't want to sound weak, especially when he was walking with her without asking for anything in return. They reached a bend in the road where the ground dipped slightly. The puddles there weren't puddles anymore. They were knee-deep pools of rainwater. Keanu stepped forward first, testing the depth before helping Anna through. The cold water bit at their legs, and Anna gasped. Almost there, he said, though in truth he wasn't sure how much farther it was. A sudden flash of light made them both pause. It wasn't lightning. It was the pale beam of headlights in the distance. Anna's eyes lit up. A car! But Keanu frowned. The lights weren't moving. They were just sitting there, faint through the fog, like the car had stopped. They approached cautiously. As they got closer, they saw it was a small delivery truck stuck sideways across the road, its front tires deep in the mud on one side. The driver was nowhere to be seen. The road's blocked, Keanu murmured. We'll have to go around. But going around wasn't simple. Thick woods lined both sides of the road, the ground uneven and slick. Anna looked at the truck, then at the dark trees. Do you think the driver's okay? Maybe he went to get help, Keanu said. Or maybe he's in the diner already. She hesitated. What if he's not? There was something in her voice, a quiet insistence. Keanu understood. She didn't like the idea of leaving someone behind, even if it meant slowing their own progress. Okay, he said. Let's check. The truck's doors were locked, but the windows were fogged from the inside. Keanu cupped his hands to the glass and peered in. There he was, a middle-aged man in a delivery uniform, slumped over the wheel, his head resting against the horn. The horn didn't sound because the battery was dead, but the image was still unsettling. Keanu tapped on the glass. The man didn't move. Anna stepped closer. Is he... He's breathing, Keanu said quickly, after seeing the slow rise and fall of the man's chest. But he's unconscious. Together they managed to force the passenger side door open. The man was cold to the touch, but still alive. Keanu guessed he'd been there for hours. We can't leave him, Anna said firmly. I know, Keanu replied. He looked toward the dark line of trees beside the road. If we cut through there, we can avoid the truck and still get to the town. But we'll have to carry him. Anna hesitated. Can you? Yes, Keanu said. But we'll move slower. The rain pounded harder as he lifted the man onto his back. The extra weight made the ground feel even more treacherous, but Keanu's steps stayed steady. Anna walked beside him, ready to catch the man's arm if he slipped. As they entered the woods, the road disappeared behind them, swallowed by fog and rain. The trees closed in overhead, their wet branches brushing against their faces. The path was barely visible, and every step felt like a gamble. "How much farther?" Anna asked after what felt like forever. "Another mile, maybe 2, Keanu said, though his voice was quieter now, as if speaking too loudly might wake the forest itself. In that moment, they weren't just two strangers trying to reach a town. They were a team, moving together through the cold and the dark, carrying someone else's life on their shoulders. And none of them knew that the real danger of the storm was still ahead. The roar grew louder with each passing second, cutting through the steady rhythm of the rain. It was deep and constant, like 100 drums beating at once. Keanu slowed his steps, shifting the weight of the unconscious man on his back. Anna turned her head toward the sound, her eyes wide. "What is that?" she asked, her voice low. Keanu listened, trying to place it. Then his expression tightened. "Water. A lot of it." They kept moving, and soon the trees opened just enough for them to see it. A wide, fast-moving river swollen with rainwater, surging angrily over its banks. The path ahead was gone, replaced by a stretch of brown, churning water. Anna's hand instinctively gripped his arm. "We can't cross that." "No," Keanu agreed, scanning the area. "There might be another way around." But in the fading light and thick fog, the forest felt endless, the roar of the river following them like a shadow. He didn't want to risk wandering deeper into the trees without knowing where they were going. The delivery man stirred faintly on Keanu's back, letting out a weak groan. It was a small sound, but it pushed Keanu into action. They couldn't afford to waste time. "There's an old bridge somewhere upstream," he said, more to himself than to her. "I saw it on my way in earlier. If it's still standing, we might be able to cross." Anna nodded, though her gaze stayed fixed on the rushing water. "Let's try." They followed the riverbank, moving carefully over wet roots and slick stones. The rain blurred the world around them, the cold biting into their fingers and faces. The man's weight was heavy, but Keanu didn't slow. Every few steps, Anna would glance at him, noticing how his jaw stayed tight, his focus unbroken. After nearly 20 minutes of difficult walking, they saw it. The bridge. It was narrow, made of wood, and it swayed under the force of the wind and water below. The supports creaked with every gust. Anna's face paled. "Are you sure it will hold?" "No," Keanu admitted, "but it's our best chance." The bridge stretched across the river like a thin line between two worlds. The boards were slick, some missing, and the ropes on either side were frayed. Still, it stood. Keanu adjusted the man on his back and stepped onto the first plank. It groaned under his weight but didn't give way. "Stay close behind me," he told Anna. "And if I say stop, you stop." She nodded, gripping the rope as she stepped onto the bridge. The sound of the rushing water below filled her ears, making it hard to think about anything else. Each step felt like it took forever. Halfway across, a sharp crack echoed through the rain. Keanu froze. One of the planks ahead had split clean in two, leaving a jagged gap. "We can still make it," he said, more to steady her nerves than his own. He shifted his footing and stepped over the broken plank, landing firmly on the next one. Anna followed, her breath quick and shallow. They were almost to the other side when the wind picked up, shaking the bridge violently. The rope on Anna's left side snapped loose from its anchor, whipping into the air. "Hold on!" Keanu shouted, reaching out with his free hand. She grabbed his wrist, her feet slipping on the wet wood. For a moment, it felt like the river would take them both. But Keanu pulled her in, steadying her just enough for her to take the last few steps. When they finally stepped onto solid ground, Anna let out a shaky breath, still holding his arm. Thank you, she whispered. Keanu only nodded, his eyes scanning the forest ahead. The rain had begun to ease, but the air felt heavier somehow, charged with something neither of them could name. They still had miles to go, and now the path ahead was darker, the trees older and closer together. And deep in those trees, just beyond the reach of the fading light, something moved. The rain thinned to a fine mist, but the forest seemed even darker now. The sound of the river faded behind them, replaced by the soft crunch of wet leaves under their feet. Keanu kept his steps steady, the unconscious delivery man still slung over his back, but his eyes were fixed ahead, scanning the narrow path. Anna walked close behind him, glancing over her shoulder more often than she wanted to admit. The moment he had said "we're not alone," the air had changed. It felt heavier, tighter, as if the trees themselves were listening. "What did you see?" she asked finally, her voice low. "Movement," Keanu said. "Could be an animal. Could be a person." Anna frowned. "You think someone's following us?" He didn't answer right away. "Maybe, but they're keeping their distance." They pressed on, the path winding deeper into the forest. Every so often Anna would hear something, a twig snapping, leaves rustling, but when she turned, there was nothing there. Then it happened again, a quick flicker of movement between the trees, too tall to be an animal. Keanu stopped, setting the delivery man gently against the base of a tree. "Stay here," he said quietly. Anna's eyes widened. "What are you—" But he was already moving, stepping silently into the undergrowth. His dark jacket blended into the shadows as he disappeared from sight. Anna knelt beside the delivery man, her fingers tightening around the edge of her scarf. Minutes passed. The forest was silent except for the soft patter of rain on leaves. A sudden shape emerged from the trees and her breath caught, until she saw it was Keanu again. "Someone's out there," he said, his voice calm but firm. "A man. He's been watching us since the bridge." Anna felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. "What does he want?" "Don't know," Keanu replied. "But he's not trying to help." They didn't have the luxury of stopping to figure it out. Keanu lifted the delivery man again, and they moved faster, though the uneven ground made it dangerous. The path curved ahead, and through the trees, a faint orange glow appeared. Light. "Is that the town?" Anna asked, hope sparking in her voice. "Maybe," Keanu said, "but we need to be careful." As they drew closer, they saw the light came from a small cabin tucked between the trees. Smoke curled from its chimney, and the warm glow from the windows was almost inviting. Almost. Keanu slowed, watching for any sign of movement inside. "We could get shelter here for the night," he said. "Or we could walk straight into trouble," Anna countered. He considered this, then nodded. "I'll check first. Stay with him." He stepped quietly up to the cabin's porch, peering through the nearest window. Inside, the room was small but neat. A table, 2 chairs, a stove in the corner. No one in sight. He knocked lightly. No answer. After a moment, he tried the door. It was unlocked. "It's empty," he called back to Anna. "For now." Together, they carried the delivery man inside and laid him on the couch near the stove. Keanu found some dry firewood stacked in the corner and lit a small fire. Warmth began to fill the room, chasing away the damp cold. For the first time all day, Anna sat down, pulling her wet scarf from her neck. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for all of this." Keanu gave a faint smile. "We're not out of trouble yet." As if on cue, there was a sound outside. Slow, deliberate footsteps on the wet leaves. Anna's eyes snapped to the door. "He's here." Keanu moved to the window, pulling the curtain back just enough to see. In the dim light, a man stood at the edge of the clearing, tall, broad-shouldered, his coat dark and dripping with rain. He didn't move closer. He just watched. "He knows we're here," Keanu said. Anna's voice was barely a whisper. "So what happens now?" The man in the clearing didn't rush. He took his time, every step deliberate, until the sound of his boots on wet leaves was all Anna could hear. The glow from the cabin's window caught his face for the first time. Rough features, unshaven, eyes sharp and unreadable. Keanu stepped away from the window, his voice low. "Stay behind me, no matter what happens." Anna nodded, her hands tightening on the edge of the couch where the delivery man still lay unconscious. The firelight flickered across her face, revealing the strain of the day: cold skin, damp hair, eyes that refused to look away from the door. The knock came then, slow, 3 heavy strikes that made the wood tremble. Keanu opened the door just enough to stand in the gap. "Can I help you?" The man didn't answer right away. His gaze shifted from Keanu to the room inside, pausing briefly on Anna. "Storm's bad tonight," he said finally, his voice deep and rough. "Thought maybe you had room for one more." Keanu's eyes narrowed slightly. "Where are you coming from?" "Up the road," the man said. "Car's stuck in the mud. Been walking for hours." It was a story that sounded close to theirs, but something in the way he said it made Keanu's instincts tighten. "You've been following us since the bridge," he said evenly. The man's mouth curved into the smallest hint of a smile. "Didn't mean to spook you. Just figured you knew the way." Anna spoke from behind Keanu. "Then why didn't you say something earlier?" His eyes shifted to her again, lingering just a moment too long. "Wasn't sure you'd be the welcoming type." Keanu didn't move from the doorway. The rain hissed around them, the fire crackled inside, and between them stood the weight of unspoken questions. Finally, Keanu stepped back just enough to let the man inside, but only into the corner of the room near the door. "You can dry off there," he said. The man took off his coat, revealing a dark sweater underneath. Water dripped onto the floor as he glanced around the small cabin, taking in every detail. "You traveling far?" he asked casually. "Just passing through," Keanu said. "Storm caught us." The man's eyes flicked to the delivery driver on the couch. "He doesn't look good." Anna moved slightly closer to the couch, as if shielding the man from view. "We're getting him help in town." There was a pause, then the stranger nodded slowly. "Town's a long way from here in this weather." Keanu studied him, trying to read what lay behind those words. Was it concern, warning, or something else entirely? An uneasy quiet settled over the cabin. The man sat on a chair near the wall, his posture relaxed but his eyes always moving. Anna kept close to the fire, her gaze darting between Keanu and the stranger. The rain began to pick up again, tapping against the roof like 1,000 tiny drums. Somewhere in the distance, a tree cracked and fell with a deep, echoing thud. Then, just when it seemed the night might settle into a tense but manageable silence, the delivery man groaned loudly, his eyes fluttering open. The stranger's attention snapped to him instantly. "He's awake," he said, his tone shifting ever so slightly. Keanu crouched beside the couch. "Easy," he said to the driver. "You're safe." But the driver's gaze went past Keanu, straight to the man by the door. His breathing quickened. "Him," the driver rasped. "Don't. Trust." The words were barely out before the stranger stood up, his shadow stretching across the room in the firelight. The cabin's fire crackled, throwing warm light across the walls, but no one moved. Keanu stood between the stranger and the couch, his stance calm but unshakable. Anna's breath caught, her eyes fixed on the stranger's face, trying to read what he might do next. The delivery man lay tense, his voice trembling as he repeated, "Don't. Trust. Him." The stranger's jaw tightened. "Seems like your friend's confused," he said slowly, his tone heavier now, losing the pretense of friendliness. Maybe, Keanu replied. Or maybe he remembers something you don't want him to say. The stranger stepped forward, just one pace, but Keanu didn't back away. The air in the cabin grew thick, the sound of rain against the roof almost swallowed by the silence between them. Anna's fingers clenched around the edge of the couch. "What do you want?" she asked. The man's gaze flicked to her, then back to Keanu. "Same as you," he said. "A way out of this storm." But his eyes told a different story. Sharp, calculating, measuring the distance to the door, the window, and the people in the room. Keanu's voice stayed calm, but there was an edge to it now. "Then you can leave with us in the morning. Until then, you stay on your side of the room." For a long moment, the stranger seemed to consider testing him. Then, with a faint, mocking smile, he leaned back against the wall and crossed his arms. "Fine. Have it your way." The night dragged on. Every creak of the cabin made Anna glance toward the door. The stranger stayed awake, his eyes glinting in the firelight, while Keanu sat in a chair between him and the others, his posture relaxed but ready. When morning came, the rain had stopped. Pale light filtered through the trees outside. Keanu stood first, shouldering the delivery man again. "We're heading to town," he said. "You can come, but you walk ahead of us." The stranger gave a half smile. "Sure." The path was slippery from the night's rain, but clearer than before. The forest seemed less menacing in daylight, though the air still held a damp chill. They walked in silence for almost an hour, the stranger leading, Keanu behind him, and Anna following close with her eyes never leaving either of them. At last, the trees thinned and the road reappeared, a narrow strip of asphalt leading into a small cluster of buildings in the distance. The sight of the town made Anna's shoulders ease for the first time in hours. As they approached the first house, the stranger slowed. "Guess this is where we part ways," he said, his voice carrying no warmth. Keanu studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Good luck." The man's eyes lingered on Anna for just a second longer before he turned and walked down a side road, disappearing into the morning mist. Keanu didn't speak until they saw the diner ahead, its windows glowing warmly. "He won't follow us now," he said quietly. Anna looked at him. "How do you know?" "Because," Keanu replied, glancing once over his shoulder, "people like that only follow you when they think you're lost, and we're not lost anymore." They made it to the diner, where the delivery man was taken to the small clinic next door. Inside, with a cup of hot coffee in her hands, Anna finally allowed herself to breathe fully. She looked at Keanu, her voice soft. "You didn't have to walk all those miles for me." He met her gaze, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. "Some roads you walk because you choose to. Others, because someone needs you to." Outside, the last drops of rain slid from the rooftops, and the clouds began to break.